for picks and bans, cleaning up, picking up the pieces. Elevate are looking to at least get a split out of here, banning away the Raven yet again against Dwurst.
Smart choice. You don't want to allow Dwurst to have that Raven or even Mifflin to take it into the jungle. Just all around too much to offer. And Obey, same story, taking away the Scotty selection, knowing that Elevate are going to have that first pick.
That Xing Chen ban, really annoyed by Dwurst on both potentially Raven and then obviously the Blink Xing Chen, the hero that Obey needed to steal away that Fire Giant.
I'm liking the confidence though with the Chronos run back. I do feel as though Elevate were able to utilize that Chronos quite well. Just a little unfortunate that the late game didn't get to come as much of a factor as what they would have liked.
Griffin got away with a really good build with that Warlock Sash, and just Obey Alliance didn't pull the trigger on trying to gank him a little bit too much, so he made quite a statement in that late game. But now, Chronos and Soul very early in this draft, Taco.
These are two very potent mages, however, so even though they've taken a little bit of a chance locking away these two, I am loving that Fafnir choice, because if there's one god that can amplify the damage dealt by these two mages alone, it's definitely a Fafnir.
That Coerce is just going to provide such a big attack speed steroid for both the Soul and the Chronos, especially if he's in that draconic form. Sobek and Sun Wukong yet again are going to be the first two picks for Obey Alliance, but instead of going for their third melee character, really prioritizing the Thoth here, wanting to give that to Delta Marine early.
Leaving a few more question marks this time around since they don't have that Xing 10 locked away as to whether or not Dwurst is going to take his chances with the Sun Wukong. I like the jungle choice bans, however. Taking away that Nemesis means that Obey still has an opportunity here if they want to add another warrior or guardian for that front line.
Hebo and Hell banned by Elevate, surprisingly, considering Thoth is already selected for Obey Alliance. Were they afraid of Mifflin playing Hebo jungle?
It could have potentially been a Hell ADC, and then again, Mifflin with Habwa jungle would have also been a strong selection. Habwa has a ton of pressure to offer whenever he's roaming around the map, and everybody likes to say he has 3 ults for a reason.
Thor and Kakolin going to wrap things up for Elevate, having a pretty good frontline and good setup. More importantly, that Tectonic Rift and the Anvil of Dawn global pressure could be the spark that Elevate need to follow up with this late game Chrono Soul combo.
I do feel as though Obey's draft is going to require a little bit more execution this time around, opting for the sustain option with that Guan Yu as opposed to a warrior that Dwurst might have had a little bit more of a laning phase opportunity as concerned. But Kakolin can still deal quite a lot, and so that's why I am kind of expecting this Kakolin to be in that solo lane role. And it will be.
And that's not a bad idea, to switch things up, to go from Chalk into Kakolin for Jacob Task. He played rather passively in the beginning of the first game, but he definitely stepped it up as the game progressed. He really wanted to dive that backline, make it kind of annoying for Obey Alliance to do whatever they wanted to do here.
It's Guan Yu support. Jelly is swapping it up. I thought that he was going to try and run it back for a redemption on that Sobek, since a couple of those plucks were a little bit fried last game, but instead going for the Guan Yu, just hoping to try and sustain for his carries as much as possible.
It's also going to try to chase down Griffin potentially after he uses that ultimate, making it very easy, because Cavalry Charge does a lot of damage if you can connect every single consecutive hit.
And that also, having that mini stun could be very effective against the Chronos, but he's going to have to be careful in the laning phase since Chronos does have a stun that could potentially halt that Tallow Assault as he's trying to clear the wave with Zaxi.
It's very true. You can also even bait out that stun and then just go into your ultimate if you are sitting at level 5. I love this rotation out of Jelly sitting in the solo lane. The Tallow Assault at level 1 just helps group up the lane so well, but he's still going to go for that support build with the Watcher's Gift. And not having Bluestone Pendant means that they still have to throw out some in-hands before going for these invades.
Check out that poke onto Dr. L, however. Because of how much damage Obey was able to put onto him in the mid lane, it means that they get to secure their own buffs this time instead of having to worry about the invade. Both sides just opting to secure the left and right mid heartbeats, however.
And it's also a trade of buffs for buffs as Obey strip away the speed of Elevate on the right while losing their own purple and red on the left. So slightly above the pacing is Elevate, a 2-for-1 buff invade go in their favor until the blue buff gets secured now.
Up until they saw that Jelly was in that solo lane side, they just knew that Zaxi probably hadn't been able to secure his own buffs. He probably just opted to take the 2 mini creeps, so that way he would still hit level 2 on time in the wave. And acquiring that much solo farm will still leave him able to keep up with Griffin, but it is a slightly detrimental for his early game.
Look at these relics out of Visions, already going for this Belt of Frenzy. I love this idea, truly showing the strategy out of Elevate that they want to go for an early Gold Fury.
The Frenzy for sure just simplifies that to me as well, because anytime you leave a Fafnir alone, having that coerce onto his teammates, and a Soul and a Chronos, 2 gods that absolutely love putting damage out onto objectives.
This is probably one of the strongest teamfight relics if you think about it. Once you have the lake in potential. Hold that thought though, it's actually taking a lot of damage on the left, but Dr. L's taking more in the mid lane. Mifflin, he found the first blood in game number 1 onto Dr. L. Second game though, he's still trying to go for it there. He's sitting at level 4. Cudgel is good, but he's surrounded by 2 players. He needs to find the transformation or get Jelly to heal him off.
And he's going to get a shell as well, just in case that wasn't enough. Now Jelly trying to put some pressure onto Jacob Task. Unfortunately, Mifflin picked the wrong way to go around for that 72 transformations. The sprint could potentially get Jacob out of danger and put
Mifflin almost dying to the heal out of Mr. Teep. That's so unfortunate that Mifflin just pulled the trigger on the Tiger Sun a little bit too soon, considering Dewurst found that block.
It's just a slight miscommunication there from Obey, but they still got what they were really looking for, and that was the first blood onto Elevate Dr. L. Dr.
L is back in the action, but he's not going to miss out on too much farm because Mifflin was so low, and all that time spent trying to find a secondary kill was lost by not farming. Not on the mark with the stun for Delta Marine. Great presence of mind from Dr. L, separating himself away from Mr. Teep, knowing that he was going to be that prime focal point target, and just stunning out Jelly, not allowing him to chase down his soul with that Tallow Assault.
That was also just a great wall in general, because Jelly's level 5. He could have opted to potentially even just straight up ult Mr. Teep and have the follow-up from Delta Marine after, since he has so much range on his abilities.
Dr. L is going to have to keep this in mind as the game progresses, just to try to look for those walls under, making sure that Jelly doesn't chase down anyone too freely. Already basically cornered against his own tier 1 tower as he's waiting for Mr. Teep to get back in, coming back into the lane with the tier 2 boots.
Dr. L is still level 4, just now about to hit level 5, slightly behind Mifflin, but it's his speed buff respawn that I'm keeping eyes on, because it looks as though Obey wants to take it yet again.
It just seems that Obey wants to keep pressing forward this speed buff. They realized that the last game that Sustain was a big deal for Elevate. We saw how important the Sylvanas pulls and the heals were for Vision. And this time around with Guan Yu for Jelly, he was doing a lot of work. Speed buff will get confirmed by Delta Marine. He picks it up even just for good measure as he channels up that final judgment, not wanting to pull the trigger quite yet as Obey Alliance walk away.
But Jelly still has his ultimate available. He's going to opt to just try and get out of there. Frenzy having been popped by Visions, expecting a little bit more follow-up as soon as he saw Jelly going up into the ult.
Not having the necessary setup for that supernova, unfortunately, so walking away with the speed buff, trading out the ultimate from Jelly for the relic out of Visions. It's a slight favor for Obey Alliance, about a 15 to 20 second window in that category. Nothing too much to write home about, but Obey Alliance stripping away another speed buff against Dr. L.
And that's just Doors using that hog to its full priority, and that's just, if you're gonna build a hog, you should invade.
Yeah, you have to. You don't have the best teamfight presence with the hog compared to, let's say, a sprint, girdle, shell, horrific. You might as well continuously invade, especially before a lot of these items and levels come online, and take advantage of this support.
Especially considering that Visions was a little bit more delayed on getting to that solo lane side of the map in comparison to Jelly, who'd already been hovering that area.
And once Visions made that rotation on the back right Harpies, he actually got poked out a little bit more than he wanted to, and he was forced to almost concede that speed buff before it even began.
Dewurst right now trying to make Jacob Task concede the solo lane pressure, but doesn't seem as though it'll be super effective. Zaxi trying to catch up to Griffin, using that additional movement speed off of the knock-up dash, but not enough to close the gap.
The accelerate was just a little bit too much for Griffin. I think Jelly wanted to get in range just to use the Tallow Assault. Couldn't quite get there in time to poke out that Hunter. And as a result, we're just seeing a little bit of lull here between these two Hunters. Sitting at level 8 here is Griffin with the red buff, as Zaxi still remains at 7.
This is probably going to be very similar to the last match where we saw Griffin and Zaxi on this Jingwei Chronos respectively. It's because neither of these Hunters can really punish the other early on, and both just get a free farm.
Right side, Dr. L not on the mark with that Anvil of Dawn. Dworst sniffed it out in the bottom side as Mifflin was thinking about making that rotation. Dr. L spots him with a nice little position war there above the Fire Giant. Vision control on the right side dictated by Elevate, but on the left, it's mostly Obey Alliance.
Dr. L's had some very solid Thor walls already, preventing any sort of follow-up pressure from Obey, which is really important to keep a mind on, because anytime you expend an ultimate like that, you can almost anticipate the counter.
Mifflin goes in with a Tiger Stun 1v2. He gets knocked out by the Supernova. Does get into safety. Jelly comes riding in on the horse, but he's out of range. On the backside, though, Dwarfs is there with the plug, finding the kill onto Dr. L, his second one of the game. And Obey Alliance now all around the mid lane could look for either some tower poke, or maybe this Gold Fury.
What a rotation by Dwarfs, just walking all the way over to those left mid Harpies. His team made the call to go in, and now he's even saving his own mid laner as Jacob Taz was trying to put a little bit of a beat down.
Great knock-up. It's going to prevent the stun after the root. Dwarfs is taking a lot of damage. He needs to avoid this next Stellar Burst. It's actually going to be changed target onto Delta Marine. Sprint being used defensively by Elevate, trying to retreat under their own tier 1 tower. And that was a clean 1-for-0 at the end of the day.
But that works out so much better for Obey, because sure, Doors had to use his ultimate, but it was the sprint being forced out by Jacob Task, which means he won't have that in as he goes back to the laning phase against Doors.
Both of these Hunters trying to battle for these Oracles. Goes in the way of Griffin, getting credited with both. Dr. L needs any farm he can get. Sitting at level 8, 1 level behind Mifflin. Is going to share this next wave with Griffin. And as a Hunter, though, this guy has to hurt you a little bit.
Just a little bit, though, but he's probably still going to be looking to build into that Warlock Sash yet again, really loving that health that it provides, which he should, because of the draft that Obey keeps opting for. So much chasing potential means that you're going to want a little bit more survivability, which is what Warlocks can offer.
Now, whenever I see a Chronos or anybody go for a Warlock Sash, it means that they're expecting these teamfights to last quite a long time, but wouldn't that favor Obey Alliance, considering they have Guan Yu for the sustain?
Guan Yu still has a great heal, but it's not as effective as it used to be. In order for Jelly to get full utilization out of it, he's got to be careful with his positioning.
Stun.
Speaking of which,
stun onto T, but he's in the Disapparate form. It's going to give him enough time to go to his tier 1 tower, but underneath, Mifflin, thinking about diving this, just gets the cudgel off, avoids the hammer stun from Visions, uses the Ox form just to continue the pressure in the sky as Dr. L lands into the backline, stunning out Mifflin. Great heal and shell being popped by Jelly, keeping his jungler alive, and it's actually Dr. L in a lot of trouble. Third death of the game.
Final Judgment was used there by Delta Marine, even though a little bit of overkill doesn't matter because Mifflin still got the kill. Griffin trying to punish Delta Marine for being so pushed up, but with his dash being available, no further action can be taken.
The rotation from Griffin trying to avenge his fallen teammate, not in time, unfortunately, for Elevate. And this is a slippery slope now. This Thor, 3 deaths in a row for his team.
This is where it gets really dangerous, because when you're picking one of those assassin gods, and sure, Thor can be a little bit more warrior-esque when you compare him to the other assassins, but it's not like a Sun Wukong, who is literally that much of a bruiser and a front-lining force. He's already got 2 kills. He's even opted to build straight into a Brawler's, not wanting to take any sort of chances with the heal. Just full commitment onto Mr. Teep seems to be the mentality here.
Very affordable build coming out of Mifflin, trying to get that power spike while he still can. Double tap on the mark, negate some of the damage with Jelly's heal. Right side, though, looks like the speed buff is the target, unless they're going to go onto Dr. L. 2 out of 3 shots from Delta Marine hits the Thor, and now Obey Alliance, they set their sights onto the speed buff. The Hog is available for Doris. Jacob right around the corner. Finds a knockup only onto Jelly. Gonna avoid out that hammer stun. Coming out of Visions, a great disengage yet again from Obey Alliance as they strip away another speed.
And Dr. L was just trying to find a double tap onto Delta Marine, unable to connect there, which just means that he's gonna actually get stunned out in the mid lane instead, not having his hammer available until just now to get away.
Left side is the escape path that Dr. L elects to go for. Doesn't have his ultimate. Sorry, he just got his ultimate back available. Now that these Oracles have respawned, it seems that it's going to go for a one-for-one trade. Obey Alliance not really on the mark in terms of controlling the vision around this Gold Fury, but instead, they're willing to just get a lot of kills here onto Dr. L instead.
Obey Alliance, though, in comparison to the previous match, are certainly putting a lot more emphasis on the early game than beforehand. Now they're really trying to look for those early commitments, the early aggro sessions, because the sooner that they build up those kills and get those snowbally power spikes for gods such as Mifflin on the Sun Wukong, the better off they're going to be.
Having Devil Gloves already on Zaxi with 34 stacks, really trying to get that physical power online, and Jelly having a little bit additional mobility with the Swift Wing. Normally, we only see these on solo laners since the teleport tier 2 change where you can't teleport to any ward unless you spend 500 gold to upgrade it.
Last game, I believe that he opted for the same High to the Urchin Rush. This game, he might have felt as though he needed a little bit more speed in order to get back to the lanes and farm as efficiently, since he's getting poked out and being forced. It's not so much the poke out either, as much as it is his mana pool that might be becoming an issue.
I mean, he's a Guan Yu. He has a horse. He needs a little bit more mobility. He's trying to get in range to find multiple hits of that cavalry charge and the stun effect. We're seeing Obey Alliance collapse around their own sentry ward, not allowing Visions to try to get the vision that he really needs. Did he drop it around that Gold Fury? Nah, he didn't.
No, I think he's just fine from where his standpoint is right now. And either way, Elevate are still looking to just try and counter-engage mostly. But with Dr. L being as far behind as he is, that could prove to be a difficult task. Although that's a nice double-tap poke-out stun with Vision's follow-up hammer.
Mifflin a little bit sloppy in the rotation underneath, not respecting the potential out of Dr. L's Thor. He is sitting at level 11. It's enough damage with the stun to confirm about 25% or more of Mifflin's health, especially considering there's not that much health or defenses quite yet for the Sun Wukong jungle.
It seems as though Dr. L would rather have the Shifter Shield second item, feeling as though he's getting way too much poked out by Mifflin on this bruiser. So having the shifters will also make him a little bit tankier as well.
Not only that, it provides a lot of physical power to be able to scale with once you do get more combos off. If you can combo your Anvil of Dawn Tectonic Rift pretty well. Dwarf's going to take a little bit of poke. Finally, Dr. L gets his own speed buff, but he has to use the ultimate defensively.
It didn't come easily. Jelly was right there charging in with his ultimate, and fortunately enough for Dr. L, he's able to get out in time because he actually accidentally pressed on his own purification bead, so he won't have those available. Not certain if anybody from Obey noticed that, though.
Unfortunate set of circumstances going in as Jelly stunned out. Dr. L, 2 out of 3 on the mark, hammering away before the third shot from Delta Marine would have secured the life. Surely there. Oracles going the way of Obey Alliance now, trying to figure out their next plan of attack.
Not a single member from Elevate is able to provide vision onto that Gold Fury, which just means that Obey Alliance, if they really want to, or if they catch Elevate slipping as far as where their members are on the map, I could easily see them aggressing onto that Gold Fury.
Different style of mid-mage builds here. Soul going for this Divine Ruin, really respecting the heal potential out of Jelly, whereas Delta Marine on the Thoth going for the traditional bursty mage style.
Understandably so as well for Mr. Teep. Speaking of which, Delta Marine taking another decent chunk of his health, but finding a little bit of it back thanks to Jelly sustain.
And off of those 2 mage items here, I'm expecting a lot of action, probably favoring out Obey Alliance. Even with that Divine Ruin, that hurts a lot of Soul's damage.
It hurts a little bit of Soul's damage, but it's still 80 power, and that is enough to where it won't hinder it as much as you might expect, although it is unfortunate considering that there's obviously better items that you would ideally want to prioritize in that second slot as a Soul. When you're facing off against a Guan Yu and you feel as though the sustain is going to be a problem, every single member actually, for Obey, has some form of sustain in their kit.
Whether it's AoE sustain on the Guan Yu or self-sustain for their own kit. So Elevate prioritizing a lot of these teamfight engagements. Mifflin stuns out Griffin, forces out the beat, still taking a lot of damage for his trouble, not wanting to commit with the rewind. There was no reason to because there was no turnaround potential. Dr. L forced to disengage. Jelly and Delta Marine chunking out that jungle.
Delta Marine and Jelly were more than ready to respond. As soon as Dr. L's wall just split the two of them apart, didn't really make too much of a difference as they were both able to still get their abilities off.
Nice stun from Visions onto Mifflin, not going to allow him to get a free Tiger stun onto the Fafnir. And 16.5 minutes into the game, neither team quite pulling the trigger quite yet on this Gulf here, but pulling the trigger is Jelly as he finds a 3-man stun and then a 3-man knockout from Mifflin, forcing out the rewind from Griffin. Zaxby's going to get stunned out, but he uses that Aegis. Visions transforms into the Dragon, looking for more. Delta Marine gets taken out by Jacob in the mid lane.
And now it's going to be Visions just trying to survive as he's getting run down by Jelly. Will get cleaned up thanks to the dash off. And Dwurst, meanwhile, finding...
Dwurst cleans up. Mr. Teep cleans up Mifflin. End of the day, it's a 2-for-2. A nice use of your global pressure ultimate from Dr. L, exploiting Delta Marine being left alone in the mid lane. And Jelly and Zaxby starting up the Gulf here. It's very important for Griffin to get in position here to defend. But without his ultimate, without his relics, he's going to get chased down. The sprint's being used. Talon Assault to follow suit. The knockup, not wanted to come in with the dash there, recognizing Mr. Teep was right around that corner.
Zaxby's dash was actually probably still on cooldown. It's a relatively long cooldown, probably right around 16 seconds still, pending on how he's choosing to level. And either way, just he couldn't chase as much as he probably would have wanted to.
Not able to find the Gold Fury or a kill onto Kronos. However, Obey Alliance just goes to show they're very confident right now, trying to even go for some of these objectives. Dwarves gonna miss that pluck there as Jacob uses his ultimate during that rage mechanic form, making it a little tricky to hit some abilities.
I do feel as though Zaxby and Jelly probably could have baited that situation a little bit better, waiting until Griffin fully came into the Gold Fury pit before trying to turn onto him.
You can even drop that persistent gust around a corner, so as Kronos is coming through, gets knocked up into place, making it even more difficult to survive or even get off the rewinds. Unfortunate for Obey Alliance, but still a relatively even game. About a 1,500 gold lead for Obey, almost 19 minutes in.
And it's been going all in Obey's pacing. I would have to say Obey have had an excellent job so far as ensuring that they can keep Elevate locked out of the jungle where they want them to be.
And it's just been a slow and steady pacing, honestly. Even though that it's Elevate on the worst end of things, it's Obey slowly taking what they can. Dr. L slowly out of position at times. He has 4 out of the 5 deaths from Obey Alliance, and this is something that... or 4 deaths from Obey Alliance's 5 kills, and this is something that Obey has been constantly looking to exploit. This Thor from Dr. L has just been not as impactful as one would want.
And considering how many deaths Dr. L has already acquired on this Thor, that could be part of the reason why we see him opting to go a little bit more tanky with his build selection, starting off that T1 of what could possibly be a Genji's guard, since that would help him out with cooldowns should he take magical damage.
Having a lot of MP5 to spam his abilities as well. Mifflin going to take some damage, dishing it back to Mr. Teep, and considering the Shogun's Kusari has been complete from Visions, it should be a Genji's coming out of Dr. L. We were talking about the Fafnir synergy between the Soul Kronos combination for Elevate, and I'm not really seeing it with the objectives quite yet, simply because Dr. L keeps getting picked off, allowing Obey Alliance a slight duration of control around the map.
That and the fact that Visions is probably more concerned about trying to ensure that Elevate Dr. L is still alive, so he doesn't have a whole lot of opportunity to dive as much as he would like to. Speaking of which, Hammerstone just off the mark onto Jelly, safe and sound underneath his T1 tower.
Jacob still holding onto his ultimate, not wanting to pull it around the tier 1 mid tower, but Dwarst made the rotation. He's going to plug Jacob back in. Jacob now will find a 3-man ultimate as Visions goes into the dragon form. A lot of damage Delta Marine took into the sky. Is Dr. L trying to land into the backline, still holding onto it for a little bit longer, but he's going to miss it as he goes straight back in the front line instead.
There wasn't really any opportunity for him to try and pursue that kill onto Delta Marine because he probably would have been CC'd out of it, but now it leaves him open to Mifflin's poke out potential. Griffin, however, showing face just to try and prevent Obey from chasing out his jungler.
He's going to drop a ward right between the red and the purple buff. Really well positioned to spot out Griffin. He's going to have to wait for Visions to be that buffer that he needs before he goes in, juking out the pluck. The rest of Obey Alliance, they're going to reset the Gold Fury, but not before they sprint in, going into the back as they take out Griffin. Instantly, no time to rewind.
Knockups are the best CC in the game for a reason, and Jacob Tass now finding that to be an issue as Dwers cleans him up with the sickening strike.
Nice stun onto Visions, but not enough damage because they have to back on out. They're too focused on Dr. L. He already has 4 deaths in this game. Can it be number 5 for Obey Alliance? Instead, peeling off of that jungler, not wanting to commit as they have better picture in mind. It's the Gold Fury that's already sitting at half health. No one from Elevate to contest.
There's absolutely no chance for them to contest considering how quickly that Gold Fury was shredded anyway. Zaxi really showing off just what Executioner and Crit can do to an objective.
Looking at the player damage, Mifflin has always been at the top of the charts here with his Sun Wukong, just always in the right place, the right time to get off the poke, and this is a good timing to be able to try to exploit this because the Sun Wukong, like we were talking about before in Game 1, goes from this kind of bruiser warrior, poke you from a distance god in the early game to a meat shield in the late, so you might as well get this damage in while you can.
And Sun Wukong's main priority as the game progresses is just to try and keep his carries alive and just be in the face of the enemies. And as long as Mifflin has the rest of his team to follow him up, he'll be just fine. He's also got Dwers to rely on just in case his team needs a little bit more backline protection peel, because I would anticipate Jelly to be more of an initiating factor on this Guan Yu.
And I love this item Mifflin elected to go for, Runic Shield. This is so refreshing to see somebody pick up this item, especially against a Soul or Chronos, or why not both here, limiting the magical power against the enemy gods.
It's so very effective against these two mages in particular as well, since they rely pretty heavily on their auto attacks.
Trying to find something happening in the Soul lane as Mifflin makes this rotation. Visions is not on the mark with that hammer stun. Jacob going to eat some poke for his trouble. In the mid lane, though, I'm seeing a little bit of a rotation from Jelly, trying to out-pressure Mr. T. But pluck, though, onto Jacob, into the stun, which gets immune by the ultimate from the Kukulkan. Dwers thinking about diving this with Mifflin into the Somersault Cloud. Needs to find another pluck, but it's actually Jelly wrapping around underneath. Finds? No, he doesn't find the stun. Leaps over the last hit.
That reaction time by Jacob Tass, managing to get away, anticipating that stun would come through, and now it's the turnaround as Mr. T is trying to help his team find a kill. Dr. L landing right on top of Dwers, but these frontliners are way too tanky.
Stun is good. The Chronos time stop is not on the mark, though. Making the rotation a little bit too late, though, is Zaxi. He's probably going to start up the Portal Demon here by himself, unless he's a little bit too worried. The rest of his teammates are rather low. Mifflin did have to back on out here. However, Elevate, they're just going to allow 2 members to get this tower on the right-hand side because they want to go for this Portal Demon.
And for good reason. Visions actually being immune to that due to his Dragon Form wearing off.
The reset is so good. The final judgment was also fired by Delta Marine. It was just slightly off the mark, though. Jelly going to slow out Jacob here. He doesn't have his ultimate as he just uses it now, trying to jump away into safety. Nice time stop there onto Jelly as Griffin trying to deal with Mifflin on the backside and now having to deal with Jelly on the front. Visions jumping over the walls. Griffin rewinds into safety here. He's trying to survive. He's left alone here on the backside, though. Thor now is kind of going on the right-hand side alongside Griffin. These 2 mid-jungle needs to find an escape path and hold hand in hand while the rest of Obey get the Portal Demon.
Even though the entirety of Elevate managed to stay alive during that engagement, it still is completely against them because of Obey being able to secure that Portal Demon. Luckily enough, though, for Elevate, I'd say that was a fortunate situation because Jacob Task was almost killed due to the wall from Dr. L cutting him off.
He just barely got out of that one. He used his ultimate at the right timing for that CC immunity, jumped away as he normally does. He's been so on the mark between avoiding a lot of CC setup and yet again, Obey Alliance, they stripped away multiple speed buffs and they're not done yet despite it being 25 minutes in.
Jelly feels more like jungle roamer #2 as opposed to a support this game, and that is a great look for him. Last game we saw him trying to play this aggressive on the Sobek, not having as much flexibility with it, but now with the Guan Yu's ultimate and having that shred protection, or that shred possibility due to the Tallow Assault, it's working out much better for him.
It's all about the utility coming out of Jelly. He's not worried now about being the main engager. He still has that with the cavalry charge, and he has the heals, the cooldowns necessary. As long as he heals his allies, as long as he dashes through enemies, he strips away some of the cooldown from the rest of his kit, making it very annoying for Elevate to deal even damage, because that heal is going to be up very often.
And actually, the worst with that shield of regrowth, that's a throwback item for sure. Not really picked up as often nowadays, but getting the boost, or the movement speed boost, off of his Sickening Strike seems to be working out for him.
I like it. It's a little neat, you know, nice little neat trick. You use the Sickening Strike to get the heal, proc the shield of regrowth, get the mobility you need to cut the distance just to get the pluck. Mifflin, though, takes a lot of damage, forced to escape, though, with the ultimate into 72 transformations, but this is all tactical. That was done on purpose. It's the left-hand side. Obey get the Gold Fury.
But why are 4 members of Elevate even hanging out on the solo lane side to begin with when there's only a lone Sobek?
He's baiting everything. He's juking and weaving for so long. Elevate want to get this tier 1 tower for so badly. It's already at half health. They're not able to really get it. Dr. L is thinking about making the rotation. Supernova being used, trying to lock down the Croc. He's not able to get taken out quite yet. Making the rotation is Jelly, stunning out for Zaxby's here, trying to find the cleanup. Dr. L takes out Dwarfs as he tried to escape. Double knockup onto that tier 1 tower. Delta Marine trying to do what he can underneath as Griffin is trying to chase down the dash from Delta Marine. Cut against the wall. Dr. L still underneath. Finds the stun out to 2. Double tap is so good, forcing out the Aegis of Delta Marine. Berserker Barrage will clean him up.
But it's not going to be left unanswered as Jelly is looking to find Mr. Teep, and he does, but Griffin easily wiping out Zaxby since he was caught up in that double tap engagement as well.
3 for 1, 4 for 1. Dr. L has made such a great rotation and a cleanup. This could be a deicide, unless they just want to go for this tier 1 tower instead. Visions tanks it up for the moment here, having the Emperor's armor to limit some of the attack speed. What a play coming out of Elevate. We thought they were down and out. They're still down about 6,000 gold here, but they desperately needed something to happen.
Obey was just way too spread out whenever they decided to make that counter engagement. You had Delta Marine at the very back end. You had Zaxby still hanging around the corner side pit for the Fire Giant looking to get some poke in. And then on top of that, Mifflin had already been poked out so much that he needed it back to begin with.
I almost feel as though Obey should have just allowed Dwarfs to die for free, give up the tier 1 tower, because that was all a tactical delay to ensure Obey would get the Gold Fury.
I don't really feel as though Obey had to necessarily forfeit Dwarf's life for nothing, but had they rotated a little bit more efficiently, they could have potentially prospered off of that fight as well.
That's one of those mid-hunter situations, like, I get red buff, you get red buff, I get red buff.
I think that for this situation, and considering Griffin's build, he'd probably benefit a little bit more off of that red buff. He's had a little bit more opportunity as far as kiting for himself to be able to jump into that backline for Obey, see if he can get off a couple of time rifts.
And Mr. Teep's going for this more utility style anyway with the Divine Ruin, so he doesn't have the same amount of DPS as opposed to Griffin that has that Warlock Sash fully stacked. Bancroft's Talon does a lot of work, especially the lower he gets. Zaxby's actually going to commit a little bit. 2 crits right in a row. The stun onto Vision's going to force out the jump here as well. Another stun from Jelly. In the sky is Dr. L. Griffin, though, rewinding in the back. He wants to take a 2v1 onto Zaxby. Great play from Elevate.
It wasn't a 2v1, though, because his jungler was in the air, but now it's Delta Marine trying to get away from Dr. L, who's putting out so much damage. Griffin actually going to be the one to clean him up. Meanwhile, Mr. Teep and Vision's safe on the backside. Jelly not done quite yet, though, trying to get something out of nothing. Instead, falling back.
Dwarfs is here. He's lurking in the water. He's trying to find a return kill onto Visions. He's forced to dash away. This tier 1 tower on the left-hand side will be aggressed on by Elevate. Interesting to see a non-stopping of the back from Jelly.
That was just Zaxi getting completely blindsided, not expecting that rewind from Griffin. It seemed so completely random, but it was all calculated to begin with.
Jacob is going to dive this tier 2 tower. Kronos and Thor doing so much damage as Jacob takes out towards tier 2 tower. It's going to fall, and this is where things are getting scary for Obey, because the Soul, Fafnir, Kronos combination will melt objectives.
This is where the boost starts to really come into play. Griffin not even caring at all about the team fight, just wants the Phoenix, and he'll be able to find it alongside of Mr. T.
30-minute Phoenix without a Fire Giant in the game quite yet. Elevate, walk away like bandits. Jacob is going to give up his life here on the left-hand side to ensure the rest of his team walk away cleanly.
100% worth it every single time. Solo laners will almost always trade out their lives for a Phoenix, and it's not just any Phoenix either. It's the best Phoenix that they could have possibly secured in the game, considering it's opposite side of the Fire Giant.
Allowing for more waves to trickle down, and if you have to defend that left-hand side, the rotation path to cut back towards Fire Giant is extended even further. Obey, though, are not deterred. They don't have to worry about any fire waves too soon, so they're going to just get this Portal Demon for free, abuse their 5-on-4, because Jacob's still dead for 25 seconds, and now get their first Fire Giant for free.
This is completely free. Everybody from Elevate feeling so confident after having secured that Phoenix just immediately backs off. Obey, recognizing this, seeing that there are no members on the map, just automatically assumed that Fire Giant was good to go.
Which team would you rather be playing for at this point? Would you rather be playing for the team that has the Fire Giant with 2 Phoenixes up, or vice versa?
Definitely the team with the Fire Giant, because even though they've lost their, or what's Obey's technically right-hand Phoenix, they're still going to be able to push up that wave. They're going to be able to make up for that lost goal between the Gold Fury and what towers are left standing on the map.
Jelly has grouped up now with Zaxi and Dwarves to confirm their 3rd Gold Fury of the game. And with this Fire Giant buff around their waist for another 3 minutes and 15 seconds, it seems that they're going to be going towards the left. But look at this. There's a fire wave inside the Titan room of Obey. They're forced to have Zaxi kind of defend this. There's going to be another wave there to follow suit. The rest of Elevate, though, they're in the mid lane. They're kind of surrounding Mifflin, though.
Mifflin could be in a lot of danger. He's completely gone right now.
He's just absolutely melted. That's a 5-on-4 now for Elevate. They're going down the mid lane. There's still a lot of fire minutes left to deal with on the left-hand side. This almost completely negates a Fire Giant with Mifflin. It was a similar strategy of what Obey tried to do in game number 1 by having 4 in the dual lane and 1 in mid, but this time around, Elevate adapted brilliantly.
The mistake there for Obey was they started making the push without first getting the wave, and whenever you don't grab that wave, you got fire creep stacking up into your base instead. Now Mr. Teep in the engagement's about to break out. Jacob Task leading the charge, having to be backed off though. Shell already popped, but Dr. L is straight up in the air.
Jelly's going into the front side, stunning out 3, forcing out the beats from Griffin. Dr. L getting Delta Marine on the backhand side. Visions is very low, getting chased down by Jelly, trying to find the kill. Is Dwarves as he confirms the kill onto Fafnir. Zaxi is going to chase out Griffin, though, forcing out the Aegis on the mid lane. Jacob is forced to retreat. He's very low as well. Teep is going to force to use that Aegis just to stop that Talu with soul damage. Dwarves not on the mark with the plug, but every single time he uses that sickening strike, he gets faster and faster.
And that's all that Dwarves was looking for, was just that little bit of a boost. Same could be said for Jelly, and now those 2 gods are going to be able to lock down Mr. Teep. Forced out of the Aegis and the Disapparate did not make a difference. They still found the kill.
What just happened? At first, Obey Alliance with a nice comfortable lead. They lose 1 member. Elevate come back strong, and now this time around, Obey Alliance are yet again taking advantage of the overextension from Elevate.
And that's exactly what they were looking for the entire time. They just wanted to have those little opportunities in order to bring themselves back into it.
The tower on the right-hand side is going to be aggressed on by Obey Alliance. They need to ensure that these firemates are not going to be an issue. Jelly stunning out Griffin. Not panicking, though, not using any relics or the rewind because he didn't actually have it. Dr. L, though, landing onto Mifflin, doing a lot of damage, forces out the shell from Obey Alliance's Dwarves, plucks in Dr. L. 2 crits coming out of Zaxi as he just escapes with that hammer.
And just the triple crit build putting in work right now for Zaxi. Right-hand Phoenix has spawned for Obey Alliance, which is what they were looking for the entire time. So now with that Phoenix being back up and running, it just means that all they've got to do is push out any remaining fire waves, which I'm pretty sure Delta Marine just took care of, and then just be patiently waiting for the next Fire Giant.
15 seconds more on this Fire Giant buff, and then it's going to have to wait an additional minute for the respawn as Elevate are trying to position themselves for Sentry Wards here. If you're Elevate, how do you stop Obey from getting this next Fire Giant?
You just stay grouped up. Elevate's team fight is very strong right now between the Soul and the Chronos being online on top of the Fafnir's Coerce, and Dr. L has been mostly on the mark with his Thor ultimates despite that rocky start he had.
And he's trying to get off as much damage as he can with his build, like you said before, of how tanky it was between the shifters, the Genji's Guard, now going for a Masamune. It's not your traditional Thor build, but it seems to be at least working out for the late game. Jacob trying to zone as much as he can. Mifflin going to go into his Somersault Cloud, lands into the backline. Griffin is forced to retreat alongside Mr. T. Going to go into the rewind to go back into it as Dr. L comes landing onto Delta Marine, very low, forced to dash away. The shell is good for the moment. Dr. L going to get stunned out, forced to go into Aegis. Supernova doing what it can, but Jacob is diving the backline, uses the ultimate onto 2. Delta Marine still waiting for the right timing to use that ultimate.
Delta Marine doesn't have a whole lot of follow-up, but he's still right there behind the rest of his team. Zaxi finding that kill onto Jacob Tass, now looking to pursue the rest of Elevate as everybody's on the retreat, but they're all so slow.
Mifflin was not on the mark with a stun or the slow. Everyone retreating from Elevate as they have a 4-on-5 disadvantage for 45 seconds. The sustain coming out of Jelly is a little bit too much to handle, I want to say, even with the anti-healing coming out of Elevate.
Fortunately, still going in Obey's favor. More than happy to secure this Portal Demon because that means any members that might have been low won't be temporarily because they're just going to back to base and then immediately look to siege this Fire Giant.
Mr. Teep and Griffin a little low for their liking. Needs to be mindful about their positioning with Visions leading the charge though. Still a 4-on-5 as Jacob will revive in 15 seconds. Griffin's in the fountain while the rest of Obey Alliance are going to be starting up this Fire Giant, sitting at half health. Actually plugged into the Fire Giant a little bit closer, but almost done on purpose, trying to take out Visions. Delta Marine not on the mark with the stun, but Mifflin could be with his sprint.
And now the sprint, but the wall is going to separate Obey into 2 different segments.
The
Doesn't
crit
matter
is
though.
so good. Zaxi takes out Mr. Teep, instantly going into the airstrike, trying to dive out Griffin even further. Jukes the ultimate from Dr. L. 2 dead members from Elevate with Obey Alliance having the Fire Giant. They take out their 3rd member. They could potentially find their 4th onto Jacob and then look for this Phoenix in the mid lane.
Zaxi already had that unofficial triple kill. Doesn't really matter when you get 3 members of the enemy team and it's 38 minutes on the board. They're going to have the creep wave pouring in as well. Obey Alliance are looking to take this one home.
A lot cleaner than the last game if they can find it. 4 dead members from Elevate. Only Jacob Tass stands strong, trying to hold on to this Titan as long as he can. Unfortunately cannot do so. Obey Alliance with their 2nd victory of this first set of the fall split.